Today I want to talk about Clemson winning the ACC championship for the sixth straight time against Notre Dame. And all that's coming up after the bumper.
Don't be cornering me. Hold up. Time. You gotta help me with that corner shit.
What's up, kid folk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always college football related, sports related. We have a good time. It's not so much that Clemson won its sixth straight ACC championship. It's not that they won it with Notre Dame joining the conference for the first time in its history and as the number one seed in this game and previously undefeated. It's that Notre Dame looked bad against a full-strength Clemson football team. So bad that now we have to really discuss whether or not Notre Dame should be included in the college football playoff. Now, get this out here and out front. I believe the top four will be unchanged on Selection Sunday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. I believe that Alabama will be number one if they're able to beat Florida, and I think that that's going to happen. I think that Clemson will be number two. And then you'll probably have a conversation about Ohio State at 3 and Notre Dame at 4 with the loss to Clemson because Ohio State won a conference championship, even though they played about half as many games as Notre Dame did. Now, the other part about this that I find to be interesting is that Ohio State beat both of the opponents that it faced that were ranked. It beat a ranked Indiana, and it beat a ranked Northwestern in the Big Ten championship game earlier today at Lucas Oil Stadium. Notre Dame loses to the best team that it's going to face all year outside of the playoff. Now, many of you will point to, hey, RJ, didn't Notre Dame beat number one Clemson in South Bend? Yes, they did. They beat them without Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, and more importantly, without three starters on the defense, including all three coming from the front seven. You get those guys back, and all of a sudden, you got a different team on a neutral field. I'd also add in here that Clemson beat Notre Dame on a neutral field 2 years ago. Trevor Lawrence versus Ian Book head up 30-3 in the Cotton Bowl in the semifinal for basically what is a de facto play-in game, if not seeding game, for Notre Dame and Clemson. Trevor Lawrence beats Ian Book straight up. So the thinking here is that the 10.5 points that Clemson was favored by was generous, especially after we saw what it looked like after about a quarter and a half. We also saw Trevor Lawrence go 25 of 36 for 322 with 2 TDs and 1 interception. Travis Etienne goes back to being Travis Etienne, 10 carries for 124 yards. To say that Clemson is very much still one of the class football teams in the country, and we're most likely going to see Alabama versus Clemson in the college football playoff championship. Now, Ohio State has an opportunity, but they're going to have to get back to good, both with Justin Fields playing the worst football that he's probably played for his entire career against Northwestern in the Big Ten championship game, and with Notre Dame looking like this is their ceiling. This is just who they are. Against the better football team, they will not rise to the occasion, or at least they haven't. But it also means that we could probably end up with Alabama and Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl. Last time we saw an SEC champ versus Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl, 2007. Jamarcus Russell, LaRon Landry put a hurting on them, 41-14. And I would like nothing more than to see Notre Dame travel to New Orleans to take on an SEC team because of reasons. But after that, we got to talk about Texas A&M, right? Because their one loss as well. And their one loss came to Alabama. They lost that game by 28 earlier against a full-strength Alabama, right? So the argument that ampersand U fans might make is they played great football since then. That's debatable. They didn't look great against LSU, but then LSU went and beat Florida, right? But A&M's best win was against Florida, is against Florida. So you're actually just arguing about who had the worst loss. Was it Notre Dame on a neutral field against the full-strength Clemson, or was it ampersand U in Tuscaloosa against a full-strength Alabama that also featured, Jalen Waddle, who at the time I think was the best player in college football, and now that's probably Devontae Smith. And because Trevor Lawrence had one hell of a day against Notre Dame, one of the best defenses in the country, one of the best teams in the country, he has vaulted right back into the Heisman conversation because there's a bunch of people that want to see him win that award who have Heisman ballots. And Devontae Smith, Mac Jones might split the vote, to say nothing of what happens if Najee Harris has an outstanding game against Florida. Again, that game is going to kick off here momentarily. But I wanted to get on the show to present these options to you, right? I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to get this discussion going in the comments and into the night. Do we want to see Notre Dame Clemson for a third time? Probably not. It's on the table, though. Do we think that A&M gets in as a one-loss team that did not win its division, but lost to the best team in college football, over Cincinnati, who might go undefeated with a win against Tulsa in Nippert Stadium tonight? They also have one of the worst strength of schedule arguments in the country. They have not beaten a ranked opponent, even as they remain undefeated. Meanwhile, Tulsa is a very good football team whose only loss came to a Power 5 opponent in Oklahoma State, who at one point was ranked number 6 in the country, but did not look good against Tulsa. You're also talking about Tulsa coming after its first conference championship since 2012 and only its third since 1985. Now, there's a period in there where Tulsa's an independent as well. And let me show you some stuff here right quick. Tulsa's football, pedigree gets buried. John Cooper coached at Tulsa before he coached at Ohio State, was also an AD at Tulsa before he coached at Ohio State. He hired Larry Coker to be his running backs coach and then his offensive coordinator at Tulsa. And he ends up at Miami as offensive coordinator for Butch Davis and then takes over in Miami and promptly wins a national championship while building UTSA later into the program that it is. It is 3 minutes old and they're already really good down there at UTSA. I'm bringing all up to say Cincinnati would have an argument with a blowout of Tulsa to get into the playoff, if nothing else than a win against Tulsa to get into the playoff. I just don't think that the committee is going to put them in, no matter how much Cincy fans and Ohio State fans who, root for teams from Ohio want to see them get in there. However, if we get ampersand U in there, we're going to get them in there over Notre Dame that played in the conference championship. A&M didn't even do that. And then there's a group of people that don't want to consider Ohio State at all because they play 6 games, to which I say, pandemic, have you not been here the whole time? That they even got this number of games in is remarkable. That any of us got these games in is remarkable. I'm not really going to hold that against them. There's a whole hell of a lot of other things you could hold against them, but that ain't one of them, right? I know this. Whoever gets the 4 spot, whether it's whether it's Notre Dame, Ohio State, Texas A&M, Cincinnati, or Lord help us, Florida, they're probably going to get boat raced by Bama. However, Bama would take it personally if Florida beat them, right? And then we can get some carnage going. But I don't think that Bama would fall below 2, right? Might be Clemson because they had the ACC championship game. And then you could talk about Ohio State and whether or not winning conference championships wins out versus Alabama in its schedule. There's a lot of things you could unpack here, right? There's a lot of different directions you could go. But I think that Alabama's just going to beat down Florida. So we don't have to talk about what happens if Florida ends up winning that conference championship. But we will if Florida happens. I'll be back here to talk about it. But let's assume that Alabama beats the hell out of Florida. I just think the number 4 team is basically going to act as a bye for Alabama. That includes Ohio State. All right? There's not a whole hell of a lot that you could do about this at this juncture if you're not Clemson. It's Clemson, Alabama right now. And it's Alabama by even more. It's just not going to happen for you. So, does Notre Dame get in? I think they will. I understand there's a bunch of people that don't want them in it. I'm going, the committee's rankings are the committee's rankings. They will stand on them. They will say, we foresaw this. We foresaw that Clemson could probably beat Notre Dame. We still think that Notre Dame is one of the 4 best teams in the country. All right, that's it for me. Deuces.